Hi guys, welcome to Animate, bringing chess to life. My name is Coach Anthony and I want to take you on a journey down the rabbit hole. For those people who have never played chess before and who've always wondered, hey, what's that game all about? Why is it even called the game of life? Well, I might not be Morpheus, but I'm definitely prepared to welcome you to the real world, the world of 64 squares. And I'll be your guide as you delve deeper and deeper. Now, with chess, it's a bit like the Avengers in the sense that you have 6 main characters, all with different powers, and they are just as important as each other. It's just that they have strengths and weaknesses. The character I would like to introduce you to today is known as the pawn. You see, you've got white pawns and you've got black pawns. Now, these pawns are usually regarded as the weakling of the team. However, it turns out that these pawns are actually the captain of the team, being the most fearless, being, I guess, the one that people can get rid of very easily. With the pawns, you actually get more pawns than you get of any other piece, which is 8 each side. At the moment, our board here, if we do a quick count here, we should be able to see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 black pawns, and 1, 2, 3, 4 white pawns. Now, these guys are at first a little bit difficult because they move one way and capture another way. I sometimes find it the easiest way to look at this is pawns are a bit like landmines, meaning that when you put them down, they actually control some squares either side. So, for example, if we look at this pawn here that's on G7, this pawn here, what we see is that the pawn might be sitting on G7, but the squares it mines or actually controls are actually these 2 squares here. Right, just so that we can see that, these 2 squares here. These are the squares it actually controls, meaning if any of your opponent's piece was to land on these 2 squares, well then, quite simply, it will be dinner time. Now, as these pawns move forward, they change the squares that they control. So first of all, we look at, I think we'll highlight this pawn here on A7. On its first go, this pawn is able to move 1 or 2 squares forward. Completely up to you what you'd like to do. But pawns, that's sort of like their Grand Prix start, because they're generally, the characteristics are that they're generally slow. They're sort of plodders, you know, the foot soldiers of the army, the minions, the little guys. So they don't move as swiftly as the rest. Unfortunately, they weren't really blessed in the speed department. However, these pawns, as I said, can move 1 or 2 on their first go. Now, imagine that this pawn on A7 actually decides on its first go it's gonna hop 2. Actually, I just realized I most probably won't be able to do that. I most probably have to do it this way around and then do this. Okay, right, because I had white to move first. Right, so this black pawn that was on A7 has just jumped 2 spaces to the square A5. First little test for you is, if it's possible, would you be able to, if you pause the video for I don't know, 5 seconds, would you be able to find out which square, or guess which square, the pawn controls? I'll see you back in a few seconds. Now, hopefully you did pause your video, and hopefully it was very easy for you to work out that that square is B4. So that means now that if any piece comes on the square b4, then you can capture it. So we'll just do a quick few more tests and hopefully you should be able to pass this pretty easily. So now we're going to imagine that this white pawn here moved up 2 squares. The white pawn that was on g2 is now moved to the square g4. Wondering which squares does it now control? And if you're getting the hang of it, then quite simply you'll see that it attacks these 2 squares. So the squares it actually controls are the square f5 and the square h5, meaning once again if any piece dares to land on that square, well then it is going to be curtains. Okay, so that's the general movements of the pawns. They move forward and captures diagonally. But however, if we take this back to the starting position here, there is something to understand about the characteristics of the pawn or the little guy. I want you to imagine, you know, you just started a job as a manager and you have a team to lead. Because remember, when you play a game of chess, you are the commander in chief, you are the team leader. So it makes sense to try to understand the likes and the dislikes of your teammates. Now with these pawns, these minions, these little guys, they have a secret. And their secret, like most people, is they like friends. They like to be side by side. So these little guys on the white team are in quite a good formation because they're side by side and they got friends. Unfortunately, the black team, we've had a little bit of division here. So you notice that all those green pawns don't have another pawn next to it. So this is not really a highly desired position. Why? Well, when the pawns are side by side, they can move forward and create what's known as a chain. Let's just look at that again. There we go. See, it creates a chain where the little guy at the front is protected by the guy at the back. Now, this will be very important later on down the road, but just for now, just to know that pawns that are side by side can make a chain and they can protect themselves, it's really important for now. On the black team, unfortunately, because they're not side by side, there's no way of protecting them, which creates a target and means that, you know, they're quite vulnerable to be picked off. So ideally, this is something that we would try and keep them together as much as possible. However, in this game of chess, in the 64 square world, the most important thing to remember is that no rule is hard and fast. It's just a guideline, just tools in a toolbox. That means there are some times when it's an advantage to have your pawns together, and there are other situations when maybe it's not an advantage to have them together, but you'll see that later on down the line. Okay, one other thing that's really important here is that pawns, unfortunately, they can never move backwards. So once you move them forward, they can't go backwards. So you have to be a bit choosy when and how you move them. There is something special because most people are possibly thinking by now, wow, these little guys, they hardly have any use, do they? Weakest team of the unit, not blessed in the speed department. They gotta have friends or they become, what would I say? Like a child that you got to babysit. And if you're an older brother and older sister, you might not really want to do that. But there is one thing that's really great about the pawns, and that is if they actually continue on their merry way and finally make it to the other side of the board, they get something called promotion. And let's just take a quick look at that. So imagine, I think it's black's turns to move, sorry. So imagine we're having a race here. Now, because this black pawn that's now on a4 has no nothing in the way stopping it from getting to the other side of the board. It has no obstruction. It's just going to literally run. And let's see what happens. The white team tries that. Unfortunately, they got a few problems, especially the route that I'm going. See, if it makes it to the other side, you get promotion. Now, there's one thing I have to say. When you promote, you can promote to another team member, and you may see over here, those of you with a key 9 who already know, there's a king here. Actually, you can never promote a pawn to a king. It's just the format that I've got it in. It's the only way that I can have a position without a king on the board. So let's just ignore the king at the moment. The 4 pieces here is what you can upgrade into. You can either become a queen, the most powerful piece on the board, a rook, second most powerful piece, a bishop, that's the 4th most powerful piece, or a knight. But you cannot remain a pawn and you cannot become a king. Okay, close that in. Well, nah, that's good for a laugh. But that is Classroom 101 on the pawns. There's plenty more about them and you'll be seeing a lot more of them. But for now, just a quick introduction to and a general feel of what this teammate is like, because once you've learned them all, you will have to command the troops, and this will help you later on. Okay guys, see you in the next episode of Animate, bringing chess to life. Peace. So, in summary guys, pawns move forward, never backwards. On their first go they can go 1 or 2 squares forward. Choice is completely yours. Pawns also capture diagonally. The only time they can move diagonal is when they're capturing. Otherwise, they're the foot soldiers. They march in straight lines, as we've seen. Last but not least, never ever ever forget about the little guy. The little guy is the captain, the key, the glue that keeps the team stuck together. Mr. Dependable and also Mr. Fearless.